Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. Hi there guys, it's Adam Martin here, and welcome back to another instalment of the Now Review. And we have another release to look at, and this one is marking quite a special anniversary of sorts. As you can see, we're going to be taking a look at Now That's What I Call No.1s. Now, the concept of No.1s isn't a new one for now. There's been a few No.1s releases in the past. You had Now That's What I Call a No.1. I think that was from 2011, 2012. There was Now No.1 hits. There's been Now No.1 albums by certain decades when 100 hits was a thing. It's not a new concept, but this one is celebrating, as you can see on the cover, 70 years of the official singles chart. So the chart here in the UK that keeps tabs on all the big singles, that's been going since 1952. It's celebrating its 70th anniversary, and this album is aiming to collate some of the biggest No.1s that have graced that chart over the last 70 years. Now, most of the Now spin-offs recently have been 4-disc releases. This one is 5-disc releases, and I believe there is 100 songs on here in total. So it's basically 100 hits No.1s again, but there's 100 songs across 5 discs aiming to celebrate 70 years of the official singles chart. We'll see how well it does in just a second, but let's take a look at this cover. So predominantly we're using black in the background, but all the more to give us those vibrant colours. We're going with the paint splatter thing. You know, you've got blues, greens, pinks, yellows, all that sort of stuff. The Now logo is in a very steely silver. It's got like blue trims on the one. There's pink and purple trims on the word Now and stuff. And you've got the logo of the official singles chart as well, the 70th anniversary logo they've been using there, which I think looks really cool. I actually think it looks better than the Now part of this, to be honest. So yeah, very cool cover. I was a bit mixed at first with black being the main background colour, but considering how it pushes out like the paint splatter, if you get me, it makes that more vibrant. I'm more than happy to have that there as well. As you can see on the front as well, it's got some indication of the artists we're going to be seeing, so people like Queen, Paul McCartney and Wings, ABBA, Elton John and Dua Lipa, John Lennon, Ed Sheeran, The Police, and there's a bunch of other names as well that you can see. So my main thing is, how much are they going to cover? Because again, the official singles chart started in 1952, so that's 70 years of scope to cover. Well, let's find out right now as we turn it on over to the all-important track list. So, kicking things off on CD 1, you have Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody. Kind of makes sense, this was #1 twice, of course, first in 1975 and in 1991, one of the biggest UK tracks ever, so that makes sense. You've got Paul McCartney and Wings with Mull of Kintyre, which is very much a Marmite song. I know people who love this, I also know people who hate it. Rod Stewart with Maggie May, never liked that song to be honest. 10cc with I'm Not In Love, nice little ballad. The Beach Boys and Good Vibrations, very revolutionary for its time. Elvis Presley's here with Jailhouse Rock, so that's an old one, that's 1957, 58 I think, so we're going, you know, it is stretching to the 50s. Bill Haley and his Comets with We're Gonna Rock Around the Clock, the Everly Brothers with Kathy's Clown, Roy Orbison with Oh Pretty Woman, so quite a spate then of 50s and 60s stuff there. Lionel Richie with Hello, Spandau Ballet with True, The Police with Every Breath You Take, Duran Duran with Is There Something I Should Know, a lot of 80s stuff now, The Human League with Don't You Want Me, good tune, Soft Cell with Tainted Love, Frankie Goes to Hollywood with Relax, one of the most controversial #1s ever in its day, Blondie and Heart of Glass, Pretenders with Brass in Pocket, Celine Dion with My Heart Will Go On from Titanic, and Whitney Houston with I Will Always Love You, which was #1 for something crazy like 12 weeks, wasn't it? A very long time back in the early 90s there. So that's CD 1, 20 tracks. I'll give my thoughts on that in a little bit, but a lot of 80s stuff there. CD 2 starts with John Lennon and Imagine, probably his most iconic song, particularly after he was sadly killed at the beginning of the 80s. Oasis with Don't Look Back in Anger. You've got U2 with Beautiful Day, love that song. Coldplay with Viva La Vida, one of their best. Pink and So What. Katy Perry with Raw, Miley Cyrus with Wrecking Ball, Olivia Rodrigo with Driver's License, so coming right up to date with some 2020 stuff, Niles Barkley with Crazy, The Weeknd with Blinding Lights, which I think was the biggest single of 2020 if I'm not mistaken, Lil Nas X with Montero, The Fugees with Killing Me Softly with This Song, Soul to Soul and Karen Wheeler with Back to Life, Leona Lewis with Bleeding Love, that was massive back in the day, wasn't it? All Saints and Never Ever, Ariana Grande with Positions, Frida Payne with Band of Gold, The Supremes with Baby Love, The Four Tops with Reach Out I'll Be There, and Marvin Gaye with I Heard It Through the Grapevine. So we're closing off with a few 60 stuff there, another 20 tracks, so that's 40. CD3 begins with Ed Sheeran and Perfect from 2017 there, James Blunt with You're Beautiful, again very Marmite song, Lewis Capaldi with Someone You Loved, Take That with Back for Good, Wet 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 with Love Is All Around, I think that was #1 for something mad like 15 weeks, wasn't it? Something crazy. Spice Girls with Wannabe, Girls Aloud and The Promise, Little Mix with Black Magic, I think they had a better number 1 than that. One Direction with What Makes You Beautiful. Chesney Hawkes with The One and Only, which ironically was his one and only hit. Tasmin Archer with Sleeping Satellite, not too familiar with that one actually. I probably will be when I hear it. The Righteous Brothers with You've Lost That Loving Feeling, which I read once was described as the most perfect pop song ever. Leave you to be the judge. Cilla Black with Anyone Who Had a Heart. Dusty Springfield and You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. Sandy Shaw with There's Always Something There to Remind Me. Again, a lot of 60s stuff here. Sonny and Cher with I Got You Babe. Tom Jones with It's Not Unusual. Desmond Decker and the Aces and Israelites. Althea and Donna, an Uptown top ranking, and finishing with UB40 and Red Red Wine. Again, a bit more of a mix, a lot of 60s, some modern stuff as well. CD4 kicks off with ABBA and Dancing Queen from the 70s, Gloria Gaynor and I Will Survive, Irene Cara with Fame, Lady Gaga and Bad Romance, Kylie Minogue with Can't Get You Out of My Head, one of the biggest songs of the early 21st century, Cher with Believe, Steps with Tragedy, we got some of the parody stuff, Aqua with Barbie Girl, Psy with Gangnam Style, which was big in 2012, lest we forget, the Black Eyed Peas with I Got a Feeling, Barry White with You're the First, The Last, My Everything, Boney M with Rivers of Babylon, Bay City Rollers and Bye Bye Baby, Mud with Tiger Feet, Susie Quattro with Can the Can, Sweet and Blockbuster, Slade with Come On Feel the Noise, The Jam with Going Underground, Babylon Zoo with Spaceman, which was number 1 when I was born, I think, and Meatloaf with I'd Do Anything for Love, but I won't do that. Very eclectic mix on CD4. The theming is something I want to touch on a little bit after we've gone into the track list, so yeah, let's see. CD5 kicks off with Elton John and Dua Lipa and Cold Heart, which was a big hit last year. David Guetta and Sia with Titanium. Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars with Uptown Funk. Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers with Why Do Fools Fall in Love. Okay, we're going right back now. Bobby Darin and Dream Lover. Dean Martin and Memories Are Made of This. George Ezra with Shotgun. Robbie Williams and Rock DJ. Rick Astley with Never Gonna Give You Up. Degsy's Midnight Runners with Come On Eileen. Madness and House of Fun. Culture Club with Karma Chameleon. Adam and the Ants with Stand and Deliver, never been a fan of them, to be honest. Boyzone with No Matter What. Joe Stafford with You Belong to Me. Al Martino with Here in My Heart. Frankie Lane with I Believe. Jerry and the Pacemakers with You'll Never Walk Alone, of course, the unofficial theme song of Liverpool Football Club. Westlife with You Raise Me Up, and we finish with Band-Aid and the original Do They Know It's Christmas, one of my favourite Christmas songs ever. So a bit of Christmas in there. So there it is, all the tracks, 100 of them on this 5-disc album. So again, I'll talk more about my thoughts on the track list in just a second, but let's open this up. This is 5 discs as opposed to 4, so let's see what we've got. We've got a nice little homage, I guess, a little bit about the official charts in the 70 years. I think they did this in the Now That's What I Call a Number 1 from about 10 years ago, because I think that was essentially celebrating 60 years. So yeah, nice to talk a bit about the charts and how it's impacted the UK music scene over the last 70 years. And here are the discs. So CD1 is predominantly orange with a red splatter. CD2 is more yellowy with an orange splatter, which I think looks hideous. CD3 is more of gradually getting oranger with a green splatter. CD4 is blue with a purple splatter, and CD5 is pink with a blue splatter, which in my opinion probably looks the best of the bunch. Yeah, so not a fan of the discs, to be honest. I don't know, I just think they look a bit ugly this time around. Yeah, not really a fan. So, that was the inside of that. Again, I like that it's just not the production information of the songs. You know, you actually have a bit about the charts itself. I always think that's a nice inclusion, besides the usual adverts, of course, because you've got to get the adverts in there, haven't you? So, thoughts on this track list? Well, it's an odd one for me, because yes, on one hand, they have acknowledged tracks from across the different decades. You know, you've got songs in there from the 1950s, you've got the sort of pop boom of the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s, and even some stuff from the 2020s. I think it's just how this is arranged, because when they announced this, I wondered, you know, across 5 discs, obviously there's seven different decades to cover here. I thought maybe they go like chronological, so like, you know, CD1 would start with half of it's the 50s going into the 60s, you know what I mean? So that CD5 would finish with like the late 2010s, early 2020s. It's all personal preference, isn't it? But I'd personally prefer a more like chronological approach. What they've done here is they've literally mixed it all up. So, you know, if you're having the CD on, you might start with a track from the 90s, then you'll be thrown back to the 1950s before being thrust back to the 1980s, you know, so on and so forth. And again, it's a personal thing. I like albums like this to have a bit of cohesion, I guess, or like themed, like per disc. But some people do like a mix-up. Some people love to be. It's basically you're buying an album of 70 years worth of number 1s and you're putting it on shuffle. You know, even though it's on a CD, you are really getting a shuffle of hits, which again, will probably work for some people. And in the age that we live in, where streaming's a big thing and songs go to and fro, I guess having a theme disc is probably less important these days. I guess they just want a general, like a mix and match of of what they like. And, you know, people who import these to digital like I do to have on their phones or iPods or whatever, they're not going to be too bothered about that. It's more if you just have it on as a regular CD, you've got to be up for a shuffle sort of scenario. But I think in terms of inclusion, yeah, I mean, I was worried that they wouldn't include anything from the 50s, but, you know, you've got some Elvis Presley and you've got some of the, like, early rock and roll stars songs on there, so I'm glad that they've gone right back to the beginning to acknowledge it. It would have been cool if they could have got the very first number one, which I think was called Here in My Heart, if I'm not mistaken, but that would have been really cool to try and get that on here, but I don't think they do. And obviously trying to get the latest number one is difficult because these have to be produced sometime in advance, but yeah, I mean, on the whole, the selection is good. I guess the only main drawback I've seen as well is that if you're an avid Now person, if you have a lot of Now albums, especially like modern stuff or 80s or whatever, you might already own a lot of these. This, I guess, is really for a casual buyer. If you don't own a lot of Now CDs, or if you want just a good compilation of songs as far back as the 50s up to the modern day, then I'd say this is for you. It is retailing slightly higher than the standard rate. Most Now albums these days are about a tenner, but because this is 5 discs, this is retailing for £12.99 or £13, but you can get it from all the usual places. You can get it from HMV, you can get it from Amazon, your supermarket if you're lucky perhaps. So, but in terms of is this the best number one album, I'd think so, because the others were always 3 discs if I remember rightly, so having 5, inherently there's more there. The 100 hits were more themed around a certain decade, whereas this is more of a broad scope. So is this currently the definitive like Now number ones release? Probably, yeah. Obviously, you're going to have to look through the track list to see if it's to your taste, if you like that shuffle aspect, that nothing's like coherently themed, it's all just jumbled up in there. It's all based on your personal preference. But in terms of the content, I think they've done a solid selection, if a little tired. But that's all for this installment of the Now Review. Thank you very much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like on this video. We'd very much appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel. If you're brand new, we'd love to have you aboard here with us. I've been Adam Martin from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Hooks Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, The Broken Kitsumanoid, to Bose Krotz, and Polsky Liz, our AMTV staff members.